Um, we're holding that's Pirkei Avos, Perek Beis, Mishneh Vav. The Mishnah continues with what we said earlier. Hillel is still speaking. This is Hillel Hazaken, because actually later there is another Hillel that lived during the time of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, which was about 100 years later. So Hillel, we're talking in this chapter of Avos, we're talking about how people should live and how people between not just between Ben Adam and Lamokim, between humans, between Klal Yisrael and Hashem, but also between each other. But Hillel gives a very important he starts with 5 things that are in a way negative, and then he does 5 things that are positive in this Mishnah. He says like this, Hu ha'yomer, Ein bor yirei chet. The English word for bor is bor. Same thing. Now, what is a bor? A bor is somebody who is callous. He's not only unlearned in Torah, he has no social. He's socially he's very very fundamentally not more ben abris between human beings. He has no problem, for example, stealing from somebody to make a living. He has no feelings only for himself. He's selfish in a way, and he's totally uneducated. There's a very good marshal given. I saw, excuse me, Rav Shlomo Shvadron, he brings it down in his sefer, and he says, say 2 people, somebody has a businessman. He does very, very well, and one day things are not doing well. Not doing well meaning that he used to buy every year merchandise and sell it at the market. And this particular year, whatever he bought just was not selling. So from being wealthy, he invested all his money into this. He would stand till his complete fortune and his complete reversal of fortune. And if he doesn't sell it and get rid of the merchandise, then he can actually become a pauper. So he decides that he knows that in another country right next door, this merchandise is very necessary. And he tries to figure out a way to smuggle this merchandise across. He didn't want to pay taxes. A, he didn't have any extra money. And B, he tried to avoid it. So what he did was he hired a wagon driver, and he was looking around for a wagon driver that would go along with this plan, because you have to, he didn't want to get somebody into trouble without him knowing that he's getting into trouble. But he paid him a hefty fee, and so found somebody that would do this. So for the trip was scheduled for the next week. So now once he hired the guy and he paid the wagon driver, so he committed himself, and he knew if he doesn't sell the merchandise, he's stuck. But that whole week, he can't sleep because he's so nervous that he's going to get caught. He's going to get caught. It can be some serious consequences. He'll get fined for sure. They'll give him malchus. They'll beat him and they'll put him into jail. And so he couldn't sleep. He had terrible couple of days. As the trip got closer, the wagon driver also was losing some sleep. He said, what happens if I get caught? But he needs the money also. So I'm going to take the money, I'll do it. But he's very, very nervous. And 3 days before, he starts getting very, very nervous and he's losing sleep. Now, this wagon driver also hired this young assistant with this young kid who knew nothing. So the young assistant really didn't realize what was going on. He slept very well. He slept very well until a week later, they started towards the border. And as they're getting closer to the border, he realizes, this young boy, that everybody's very nervous. And he asks what's going on, and then they tell him. So all of a sudden, he really, really gets nervous as well. And he's shivering. But meanwhile, that first week, he slept very well. They get to the border, and of course, they get caught. Now, the wagon driver the owner is totally in trouble. The wagon driver is totally, and the boy realizes, he's going to probably get the least of the punishment. But there's someone that is completely calm, doesn't really care what's going on, and that's the horse. The horse is looking around. He has no clue. He doesn't care. He doesn't really care about anybody else because all he's interested is give me my food and let me move on. In fact, he's even happy that he's resting now. The boar, says the Rav Shlomo Shvadron, is that horse. He doesn't care about anybody else. He doesn't care about anybody's feelings. So a bor is not a yurei chet. He's not fearful of getting any sin because it's not even in his lexicon. It's not even in his whole being to worry about sin. It doesn't care, and that's the first madrega according to Hillel. Then we go to lo yam aretz chassid. Now we know a chassid is somebody that goes above and beyond what we're supposed to do. So there's mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim, and ma'asim tovim is already above, and then he goes even one step above that. That's considered a chassid. And Amaretz is somebody who is not like a bor. He actually has social graces. He's able to socially be and interact with people. But he's totally an Amaretz. And Amaretz is somebody who doesn't know anything. He's like a farmer. Amaretz is the literal translation is actually somebody who works in the fields. He never ever learned a Mishneh. He doesn't learn maybe he barely knows how to daven. So he can never be a chassid. He can't go beyond the letter of the law because he actually doesn't even know what the law is. There was this Amaretz that lived across the street from a Rav, and the Rav, it was Friday night, and the Amaretz looks across and he sees all of a sudden the lights are all on. Somebody turned on the lights, and they're blazing and all in two rooms over there, and he's all upset about it. And meanwhile, he says, I'm going to go, he's the Rav of the city, and from him I have to learn. So what does he do? He puts on his raincoat, it's pouring outside, takes an umbrella, and he runs across the street, and he tells the Rav, what about Chil Shabbos? What happened with Chil Shabbos? Why are you turning on the lights? So the Rav looks at him and he says, well, let me just tell you something. He says, it happens to be that my wife is giving birth, and the midwife requested more light. And the halach is, even if the midwife requests a little bit light, you should overlight. You should give her as much, not only as much as she wants, as much as you can give her to make sure that everything is fine. You let it go above the letter of the law, actually, even in reverse, when it comes to the pekuach nefesh. But you, he said, you ran across the street, you took an umbrella, you opened it up, you made an ohel. You close it, it's called saisa, you destroyed an ohel. When you didn't want to get my carpet wet, you squeezed out the umbrella, you had schita. He says, you worrying about me, he says, that's what an Amaretz is. An Amaretz is somebody who thinks above him, he thinks he can, let me tell the other guy how to behave. But meanwhile, he himself does so many things wrong because he's unlearned. So therefore, certainly, this is all, of course, to let us know when we see in the second half how much learning Torah enhances their life. Then he says, V'loi habayishan lamed. A person who is bashful, he's shy, he can't learn. The Gemara says a person should be bashful, but when it comes to learning, in other words, it's a form of tznius. You should be shy. You shouldn't be gregarious and loud if at all times. There are times for that as well. But certainly, when a person is learning and he doesn't ask any questions, when he doesn't understand, because he's shy, he's never going to ever know. So he's going to never ever reach a stage that he would be called a Talmud Chacham, because if he has a question, he doesn't know the answer, he can't really move on in certain parts of learning. So it's very important that the person should overcome the shyness and ask questions, because by asking and understanding is the way to learn. That's one of the next form of level of a human being. And then it says, V'loi hakaptan malamed. Somebody who is impatient, somebody who you can't have a teacher who is someone that is an impatient person. I've had some of those, and we all know, we've all had some of those probably, and those people should not be teaching, because at the end of the day, your job is to be patient and teach whatever your knowledge is, whatever the subject matter is, so that your students should understand it. Now, if he asks the question 3 times because he didn't understand it, A, you probably did not explain it well the first time, and B, it's your job to make him understand it. And if he doesn't understand it, you have to teach it to him again and again and again until he understands it. So, V'loi hakaptan malamed, somebody who is an impatient person, he should never be a teacher. My rebbeim, when I grew up, the first few years in yeshiva, they were all Holocaust survivors, and people who were Holocaust survivors had very, very little patience, because they went through such trauma that they were either over-patient or very impatient, because they couldn't handle a lot of things, because most of them were in concentration camps during their formative years. Most of them, the ones that survived, were young, were in their early to late to teens and early 20s. And that's when now they're in their 90s, and unfortunately that generation is passing on. But they had very, very little patience. And some of those rebbeim just couldn't handle those kids. And it was very difficult for the students. And some of the students suffered because of that. And they still talk about, we sometimes get together. Remember this Rebbe, what he used to do? I mean, it's incredible what they did. So Kaplan, so those years, many kids fell by the wayside as far as learning. There were not so many people that went off the derech in my days. But there were definitely a lot of kids that would have known much more and would have loved yeshiva. Some of them hated yeshiva until they got to Beis Medrash. I know I had a friend of mine. He's a very good guy. He says, till I reached Beis Medrash, I hated going to yeshiva. He says, because of my first grade Rebbe. He says he was a tyrant. He was a sadist, and that's for sure is loya kaplan malamed. You can't teach. You shouldn't be there. Then his next form is of his understanding humankind is loya hamar b'schar machkim. There are people that excessively are occupied with business. They wake up, they go to sleep. Whatever they do is in their mind is business oriented. You can't physically have a relaxed life and a good life if your whole life is business. And certainly you can't learn, because when you're learning, you have to focus at the moment that you're learning a specific item. If you're not totally focused on it, you're not going to know it. The Gemara is every single word at times of a pasuk is explained many different ways. And an extra letter is explained many different ways. So if you're not focused on this, you can't. So if your focus is totally on business, marba b'schaira, then you cannot become machkim. Machkim is a scholar. You can't become a chacham, because at the end of the day, your mind is not where it should be as far as that is. And Torah is supposed to be the ikr, business is supposed to be secondary. Of course, you'd spend more hours, as I said many times, in business than learning, because that's the nature of life. But the excessiveness and obsession is where this Mishneh is talking about. And even during business, if you're doing it, as I said, in a way of Torah, by each item that you take care of in business, you can fit in somehow, what is the halacha at this particular thing? So that's considered learning as well. But it's not, if you're obsessed, then everything is about the money. And then you're yesh money, yesh rights and Messiah. If you have 100, you're going to certainly want more. There are people who have $1 million a year, and they're at the end of the year, they have nothing left because they spend it. And they think the next year I have to have 2, I have to have 3. So those are people who are very unrelaxed, don't have good lives. Then he says like this. There are many times you have a group of people, but there are no leaders. You have a group of people in a get together in a bungalow colony. It's a good example, actually. You get together in a bungalow colony, and 20 guys. The first year I was in a bungalow colony. 25 of us rented a place from that was a first-time Jewish place. We rented. We had to cash everything, and there was no row. There was no row. So one guy got up on a Shabbos and said, "Listen, we're here. We all came out of yeshiva within a year or 2 or 3 or 4 ago, and every Shabbos somebody is going to say we're going to learn halacha, and somebody will say the halacha Mishneh Berurah. It was fine. Shabbos afternoon we all got together in Beis Medrash, and every Shabbos somebody else said for the day. One guy started the second week and he got a little stuck. So there was a guy in the back, and he said, "No, it means this." Okay, but nobody knew who he was. It was actually, he came with somebody, so only one person in the Balkan at that point in the second week. So, and he was working the whole week. He was a lawyer. So he, got stuck again, and the guy corrected him again. So he said, and by the 4th time, somebody says, "It seems like you really know you're learning because it was different things. Why don't you just say it?" So for the rest of the summer, he became the ish. He became the man. In fact, later he opened the Beis Medrash. So he became and he was a lawyer. But then the whole week he was a lawyer. During Shabbos he had a Beis Medrash. I think he just stopped. So this goes back 35, 40 years. So at the end of the day, it's important that there should be one person should be a leader. And if there's nobody here that should be a leader, that you think cannot be a leader, you become the leader. You should work. You should spend a few hours at night, learn the daf, and tomorrow, the next day, teach it. It takes sometimes 3 hours to teach a 1 hour daf. You become that person. You work that you should be a leader. So interestingly enough, about story is probably about 600 or 700 years ago, there was a boat that left Greece with 5 very, very big rabbanim on it. But they weren't Rosh Hashivas or anything. They learned, they were in Beis Medrash, but they were giants in learning, but they weren't rabbanim of cities or anything like that. And the boat was captured by Arab pirates. And what happened was that they sold everybody out for slavery. Now, they would go to different ports and offer the people as slaves. Now, they realized that these people were Jews, so the first people they would go to would be the Jewish communities. So one of them went to Tunisia, and they could only afford one of the 5 of them, actually. One of them was a father and son. So he went to Tunisia. Another one went to Cordoba. He went to Cordoba, him and his son, and the Rav was learning over there. There was a Rav that was learning something on the Shabbos. The first Shabbos that they were in the Beis Medrash. They would, everybody knew that he was a grandson of 2 people, not knowing who these 2 people were. And as the Rav was learning, he asked the question nobody could answer. He says, "I don't have an answer either." And one of these, the father, it turns to things. I really have an answer. And he had the same story like I had before with this fellow. And he answered very lucid, very clearly. And the Rav went and looked at him. He didn't know who he was. He says, "Thank you very much." And he went on. And there was another question that they were learning. And this is in Spain and time when there were at that time, Spain always had Rabbanim, but apparently nobody to that level. And they went, and finally, after the 3rd time, the Rav stands up. He takes off his hat, he sits down on the side, and he calls the person to the front, and he says, "I give up my post as Rav, because there's no question, you're much more worthy than I am." So all 4 of these, one of them went to Tunisia, one of them went to as I said, to Cordoba, and another one went to, they list all 4 places. Let me see if I even wrote it down. It's an incredible, all 4 became the leaders in places. The one in Cordoba actually had Rabbanim, but the other, Tunisia, did not have a Rav that they had at them. By the way, Tunisia, up to the Second World War, had a very large Jewish community that was very erlich. They were very unbelievably firm. There was nobody there that was not, there was no such thing as modern over there. And you would think, in Tunisia, Africa. But at the end of the day, Hashem orchestrated that these cities needed Rabbanim. So the Makom She'ein Ish, the Rebbeinu Hashem gave a Hishtad. The Rebbeinu Hashem made some sort of Hishtad, but unfortunately they were so scared, they were nervous when they got attacked by the pirates. In fact, when I said the father and the son that went to Cordoba, his wife was with him, and the sailors wanted to attack her, and she turned to her husband and said, "If I throw myself, am I allowed to kill myself so that she shouldn't get attacked physically? And am I going to get Olam Haba?" And he says, "You're going to get a tremendous Olam Haba." And she threw herself overboard. And she unfortunately killed herself because it says, for 3 things you're allowed to kill yourself. And unfortunately, he lost his wife. And when he got to Cordoba, he had to start all over again as a Rav. And later, I think he remarried. But what we're saying here is that a person has to take a responsibility over a crowd if there's nobody there. Because we all need leaders. We all have to, like we said originally in the first Mishneh, the second Mishneh, make for yourself a Rav. So this is the things that he says, Hillel, in that you're supposed to make sure that you have, in order for a person to exist in Klal Yisrael, these 5 things are things you have to avoid and make yourself a Rav so that it should lead you. I'm going to say something. I read this recently. It's an amazing story. There was a fellow 30 years ago. He was a young man, very, very talented in music, and he was becoming a Baal Tshuva. He was very good, though, and he started working in different gigs, different places, but he was on his way to become a Baal Tshuva. But he had a phenomenal voice, very raspy and very had good lyrics. He was a singer-songwriter. And this was in the early 90s. And one day he gets a call from, he was English, it was in England, London. He gets a call from his agent. He's all excited. I got you a gig, a job on prime time on BBC, which is in London, in England, is the main station. And this is like, finally breaking through after all this work, in a couple of years. So the guy got very excited, and he said, sure. And then he has the date and everything. He looks at the date and he sees it's Shavuos. So he doesn't know what to do. Here, he's just getting into being a Baal Tshuva. He had just started holding Shabbos. And Shavuos of all the days, which is the day that the Torah was given. And he's back and forth. Maybe, I'll do this once, I'll become a star, and then I can do whatever I want. But he didn't know what to do, and he decided he's not taking the job. He calls up his agent. I'm sorry, I know you worked hard to get this, but I can't do it. It's my holiday, and I decided that my holiday is worth more than this, and other jobs will come up. And the guy says, the agent got so upset. He says, listen to me. He says, if you would know what an opportunity this is for you, and I worked so hard to get it, and you could just, because of a holiday, you'll have other holidays. He says, I'm quitting. I don't want to be your agent anymore. And this agent was his agent all along, who understood him. And the guy was obviously, he felt bad, but it was Shavuos. He went for Shavuos, and he decided after that to leave, and he went to Eretz Yisrael to learn in the yeshiva, a Baal Tshuva yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. And he sat to learn for a year. He brought along his guitar, and after a full day of learning, he was really growing in Torah. He actually became a Talmud Chacham, and he grew in Torah. And every night after, to unwind after a full day of learning, he used to go outside and used to strum his guitar and his dira, and he was just trying to grow in music also. He enjoyed it. That was his passion, besides learning. He gets a call while he's in Eretz Yisrael, and this fellow asks him, "Are you so and so?" He said, "Yeah." He says, "Listen, I heard a song of yours a year ago." He says, "And I'd like to use that song." He says, "Who are you?" He says, "I represent Microsoft." So he says, "We'll obviously pay you well for the song, and you want to sign a contract with us." So of course, if you think BBC is big time, Microsoft was king at that time, and even today it's huge. And he says, "Of course." And from there on, he became a superstar. And his name is Alex Clare. I don't know if you've heard of him or not. Did not hear of him, but if you Google him, he has unbelievable music. Very, very emotional and very clear. He still sings. He has 24 hits, and he wears a hat. He has whenever he performs, and he has a beard, and he has actually payas, but you can't really see it because he brushes it. He hides it very, very well. But he's a cool guy still. He dresses well, and this guy gave up a fortune thinking that BBC he's going to become the superstar, when at the end he became way more by Bernie paid him back in spades. And that's part of what Hillel is talking about over here. When you are in a situation where you have to go back and forth, when it comes, and you're going to see later he's going to talk about the different things that you should be doing, and the more you do certain things, the more you're going to get out of it. This is a perfect example, and you're going to see that maybe at Hashem tomorrow. So I'll leave you with this, and we just have to remember that the most important part is that the Rebbeinu Shalom watches over us and does exactly what we are supposed to. If we do what we're supposed to do, you get paid back in spades. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you.